All right, what's on the screen is some housekeeping. If you have any issues, hit F5. That will refresh your browser if you're viewing this through a browser, and it should help with any audio or video. The slides will be sent out early next week, along with a link to the recording. All right, let's move on. So the next Focus Friday is in October 20th. We're going to talk about redefining fields, match the other join, and administrative variables in maintain. November, have fun. Aloha.
You're not going to be here, right?
Bon voyage. Yeah, I will not be here. I will be on a cruise.
So who's going to join from the cruise?
Depending on the Wi-Fi.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I could be like a Max Headroom
Yeah.
on the cruise connection. So yes, some of you will remember who Max Headroom is, some of you will not.
Yes, that's right.
But Mark will also not going to be here, but he may be virtually here. And we're going to talk
like always.
Walt's going to talk about hidden gems and dialog manager flow control. And then lastly, we end out the year in December, and we'll talk about maintain applications, re-explore expressions, and we'll talk about analyze and analysis. All right, any questions before we start? If you have questions, feel free to ask them in the QA or in the chat, or you can raise your hand and one of us will see it and you can unmute and ask it directly.
And as always, at the end of the presentation, we greatly appreciate when you guys fill out the surveys. This tells us that we're in the right place, we're doing the right stuff, and it lets us know what you want to see in the future. All right, so am I starting?
Take it away.
Take it away.
All right. Guys, I really like this presentation. It's short, it's slick, and I'm going to do it all live, and I promise all the steps will be in the presentation. So let's talk about the HTML table. The HTML tables are very useful for displaying multiple columns and multiple rows of data. It is just that, is a display table for a single stack. The cells of the HTML table are not editable, but the columns can be text, which is what we'd expect from a stack, HTML, because we can make these fields dynamic, or even an image.
Mark, did you share?
Mark, are you sharing?
No, I'm just talking out loud for myself.
I know it's Friday. It's been a long week.
I thought you were going to the build-up.
No. Now I'm sharing. Now everything cool?
Yep.
There we go.
Okay. So again, HTML tables are awesome for displaying data, columns and rows, but one of the neat techniques is we can set the columns to different things besides text. We have HTML and images. We can make selections by clicking on the header or body links or hyperlinks, but we can also use click and click link events. And these are the things we're going to discuss today. And again, we're going to go live. So I'm going to switch over to App Studio. And again, all of these steps are in the presentation. So I'm going to create a brand new HTML document in App Studio. And guys, again, while this is coming up, let me remind you, the maintain application and form builder is only available in App Studio. I honestly do not know if it will ever become part of Designer. So let's keep those App Studios installs. Okay.
Yeah, the other thing is possibly making it part of the Focus Studio.
Possibly making it part of the Focus Studio. Maintain originally was a mainframe product.
That's correct.
So we are going to create an embedded new maintain data application. It gives us the stub of code. And like always, we are going to add our movies file because it's still my favorite. To start this application, all we need to do is create a load case. So we'll say perform loader. And in my load case, I will have case loader. reposition movie code, which always starts it back at the top. And then we'll clear the stack in case we make any changes. And we'll load all the records. So what is this little loader doing? It starts us back at the top of the database. It clears out our stack, and then it's going to load all the records from movie code and all the fields into move stack. So now let's build our simple form. We'll drag the form onto the screen. And we will drag our HTML table onto the screen. How do we do it? We take the stack, we right click it, we drag it on, we say create controls, and I only want the first couple of fields. So we'll remove these fields here. Until we get to director. Nah, I won't even take director. Let's just take the top 3. And we'll change this to an HTML table, and boom, there's our HTML table. Before we can run, all maintains need a load task, because once the HTML table loads, we have to say connect to the maintain, and that's it. So let's see if this works. And here's our simple HTML table. We'll make it a little bigger. That's step 1. Can't select anything. All we can do is scroll up and down. So let's make it a little bigger. Step 1 of our enhancement is we're going to let the user make a selection from this HTML table. But we want to give them the ability to select more than one row. So in order to do this, we are going to add a checkbox to the first column. So in our code, and I'm going to cheat here because I want to make sure I don't have any typos. I'm going to enhance loader in a loop. So here was where we were up to. And here's what we're going to add. We're going to create a counter. Compute I equals 1. Give it a format. Then we're going to repeat through the stack. And how many times are we going to repeat? We're going to repeat exactly how many rows are in that stack. And how do we know? Well, for those of you who listened last month, you'll remember fo count is created for every single stack once it's created. How many rows are in the stack? Stack.fo count. I'm going to create a field called cbox1 or checkbox1 and add this code, which is HTML code for a checkbox. It's going to create it for all the rows. And then I'm going to create a checked field. And the check field is important because it's going to take the value of the checkbox and put it in there. So we'll know if it's 1 or 0. We'll then make a case select, a case process that says stack clear cell stack. I made a typo, hang on. Stack clear cell stack. And we'll create the stack by saying infer movie code into cell stack, and then copy, stack copy from move stack into cell stack where checked equals 1. So what this is going to do is when we activate this case, it's going to take all of the rows from our top stack in our HTML table, and it's going to copy them into our cell stack depending upon which of the checkboxes was checked. So how do we do that? First thing we do is we look at the settings for our HTML table. And we take move stack here and we drag checkbox 1 or cbox 1 into there. And we're going to move it to the top. Then we're going to have this be, instead of text, HTML, and its width is going to just be 25. But that's not enough. Let's change the text of this to select. And one more important thing, and I always forget this. When the user makes a selection, we have to tell it where to put that value. So we drag it into selection 2. And I think that's all we had to do. See box at the top, content HTML. Okay, we're doing great. But now how do we process this? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to add cell stack to this. Oh, cell stack did not create. Let's fix that in a second. We're going to add a button called process. And we're going to drag that function into our code. But now we have to see why cell stack didn't create. Because I spelled movie code wrong. So now that I fixed it, we see the columns here. And just like we did with the HTML table before, we'll drag cell stack on, we'll create the control, and we'll only create the first handful of fields. Okay, oh, and Mark did it wrong, forgive me. I forgot one important step. So we'll pretend like that never happened. And quickly add this back in. First, get rid of these fields. Sorry, luckily it's not the biggest segment in the universe. And there are ways, by the way, just to tell it what fields, so you don't have to do this. But I forgot to say new control HTML table. All right, I think we're ready to go on step 2. And so let's make this bigger and run and see if I did this correctly. Let's select rows 2, 4, and 6. And there we get them, 24 WAR, 35 CBS. And since we have it clearing each time, every time the user picks, it reselects. Okay, so we've just shown that we can make selections off an HTML table, and that's pretty cool. Besides the checkbox, we could add radio buttons, list boxes, drop boxes, we could add text, we could add all kinds of things. But that's not enough. Let's keep going. What if we want to be able to sort our HTML table? So let's create a field called tcol for temporary column. And then let's create a sorter case. I'm going to call it case sorter. And I'm going to say, if tcol equals 3, then stack sort move stack by movie code. And this is because row 1 is, well, I'll show you in a minute. And we can do it for movie code. Category and title. And make this columns 4 and 5. No errors. Okay, so now that we've added that, we need to look at our table, look at its settings, and we have to say when the user selects a column, we're going to add that variable to here. This should say click column, click row, click column. We just have to, infer that. So now for movie code, we change the the header hyperlink to true. Same for title. And same for category. But we have to do one more thing. We have to create a task that says, a new task, when the user clicks on the link of our first table, run the sorter. Okay, let's see if we did it right. And after this, we have one more thing, but it's a quick one. So let's try title, and it sorts, category, and it sorts, movie code. Now, movie code is third column because 1 is the row number, 2 is our select box, and 3 is movie code. All right, we're doing great, and we can still select from here, same way. But there's one more thing I want to show you, and I'm really excited about this because I can, yes.
So ideally, you could also do a sort on select so that if you selected things that were off the screen, you can have them float to the top.
You can do a sort on anything. And of course, this is only sorting high to low. We could absolutely put in a switch that said high to low or low to high. We could, we can keep a flag that says if it's sorted low to high, then sort it high to low. And yes, we could sort anything you want.
Cool.
But I want to do one more thing, and I was very excited about this because this technique kind of disappeared, and I really wanted to put it back. So we're going to give the user the ability to delete a value using an image. And we're not talking using wingdings. We're talking actual images. So in my repeat loop, I'm going to add another field. I'm going to compute image 1 to a path of a garbage can issue that is in my Focus Friday directory. It's physically on the server. And I'm also going to compute a trow value /i3. And then we need to do one more thing. We're going to add a delete case, and I'm just going to copy the delete case in. And the delete case says, delete the selected movie code. You're going to pick a row, and you're going to delete the movie code on that row, and then reload the database, reload the table. That's all we need to do to delete something from the database. But how do we know which row we want to delete? So we now need to edit this table one last time and grab the image field and drop it onto the table. We'll change the heading to delete, and we'll get the row value and stick it in the click row. So now we know which row it is. But I need to know that in the application itself. So I'm going to drag trow onto my form. And for grins and giggles, I'm just going to rename this row X instead of edit 4. So we've added the image field. We've added a field to our screen. So now we have to add a function. Oh, let's do one more thing. I'm sorry, I want to change it. Now let's make it 25. Okay, but now we really have to put in one more event. That's going to be on the HTML table. On its properties, on its JavaScript, we're going to add a JavaScript into the click event. And I know better than to try to write this during a presentation. So what this JavaScript says is get me the column that the user's clicked and put it in colX. Get the row that the user clicked and add it to that field on the screen. If the selected column is 6 and the row value is greater than 1, not the header, confirm the delete and then perform task 4. Oh, well, if we didn't have task 4, we're going to need it now. TBD, and it's going to perform our delete case. Once again, I realize I'm going a little fast. All of this code is in the presentation, and if you have any questions now or while going through the presentation, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Okay, well, that didn't work. Let's find out why that didn't work. It's probably because I forgot to change it to image text. There we go. Now it'll work. I put text in and was surprised it showed me text.
You
Okay,
didn't have ESP turned on?
so I realize it's a little bit off, but you see if we click here, nothing happens. If we click here, nothing happens. If we click here, we're asked if we want to delete the row. And if we do delete, it disappears from our table. So that's it. We have our HTML table, which is a static object, which no selections can be made off or entering, but we've given you the ability to select fields. We've given you the ability to delete fields, and we've given you the ability to sort fields. And that's just the versatility of this piece of
You
code.
change that text for the delete confirmation from localhost :8080 or whatever it was.
You can absolutely delete you can absolutely change the text. Here, this doesn't have the 8080. If you put in an absolute path, yes, it'll look at that absolute path, but I think it should be more of a dynamic path in case you ever change machines.
What
Yes.
I meant was on the confirmation when you say delete. That
The JavaScript error message? No. To this day, I have not found a way to change the name of the machine from the confirmation message. And yes,
localhost :8080.
yeah, that's just the name of the machine. It'll always do that. And the recording of this presentation will come out on Monday. All right, that's it for me. Does anyone have any questions?
Mark, the local host will be whatever name you have in your URL, right?
Yeah, it's the name of
Yeah.
the server.
Yeah.
I don't know a way to mask that because it's coming from the web page itself. It's a JavaScript call. All right, if there's nothing more, again, if you have questions, you can certainly email them to me at mark.derwin@cloud.com. And I just want to wish everyone a Lashana Tova, Happy New Year for those who are celebrating. And I cede my time to the senator from North Carolina.
All right, let me share. Over here, share. Okay, nothing's there. And there we go. Do you see?
Yes, we do.
All right, today I'm going to talk about more. More on more.
Moron?
Hey. Which is different from next month when you're talking about match.
Match, right.
So more is one of those procedures or functions that we have that lets you take data from more than one file. So normally you do a join, and the join says horizontally, I want to extend this record with fields from another file. The more says, I want you to append the data from another file as if it was part of this file. So it's a concatenation. In order to use more, you have to have data sources with common fields, and the fields have to have the same formats. You can concatenate any type of file together as long as they meet the rules. Same field, formats. Okay.
If they're different, you can use a define to change them.
Yep.
If you need to. And we'll get to that. All right. So you can concatenate Focus, DB2, IMS, VSAM, fixed files, Oracle, MySQL, anything that you have, again, as long as you have the same formats for the fields that you're reporting on. Okay, this is all the same. All the data appears is from a single source, and we'll get into that when we show you the example. So when you use more, you identify a main request, and that main request will identify the fields that you're reporting against, any sorting criteria, the output format, and any styling. So the main request should have all of that in it. to get what you want. All of the sub-requests, all of the additional files that you're accessing will have the file name and any where criteria, any filters, any record selection that you want to use for that particular file. So everything, the main information is in the main request, and then the sub-request should only have where conditions. So the first request will run. In this example, I'm going against the focus data source, and the data gets put out. Then we go against the next source. In this case, it's a vsam file. For those of you not on a mainframe, that's one of the mainframe relational or keyed fields. Then we go to a second data file, and then we have the third one. In this case, it's just a fix or a hold file maybe. It's going to go to a third data file. Once we get the three files together, they're sorted together, and you get the output. All right, so we're talking about the fields must be the same format. So corresponding fields in subsequent requests must be based on the field name and format of the main request. This you have to have real and defined. So in this case, alpha, the type and the length must be the same. Integers, floating point, and decimal, the types must be the same. For packed, the type and the scale must be equal. If you have a smart date, they will always correspond. You don't have to make any changes. Legacy dates, you have to have the same legacy date options. If you have an A8 YYMD and you have an A6 YMD, no, that's not going to work. And text fields are not supported. All right, so we're looking at table file car. So I'm going to do, in my example, three files. I have the focus format car file, I have a DB2 version of the car file, and I have a fixed version of the car file. So three versions of the car file, and I'm going to get information for England, Japan, and Italy. I'm getting the dealer cost, retail cost, by country, by car, by model. So here's the car synonym, master. So notice we have country is an A10, car is an A16, model is an A24, dealer cost, retail cost, they're both D7. In my fix, the usages all are the same for car DB2. And for the fix, they're also the same, except the car fix does not contain model. Okay, keep that in mind. So if I want to add those files in a more, I'm going to say table file car, print dealer cost, retail cost by country, by car, by model, where country equals England or Japan or Italy. More, file car DB2. And in this case, I don't have a where condition there, so it's going to take all of the countries, cars, and models. And then I do a more, and then file car fix. If I run this, I get an error. No match is found for the field of the main request model. Because remember, I said car fix didn't have a model, and we have to match all of the fields across all of the files that we're mooring on. So how do we change that? And this is also how you would make the formats be what you need them to be. We do a define, as Art said. Define file carfix, because we were missing model in carfix. Model / A24 equals from carfix. Could be whatever you want it to be. If you want blanks, you can have blanks, but I want to show that this is where we're getting this information from. So when I run it now, it runs, and I see the entries now where I didn't have a matching model, but I did have a matching country and car. Okay. In this case, I'm doing defines on all three files, just to give it a source of the data. Because when you're concatenating files together, maybe you have monthly information. So you have accounting information for September, November, and December. And then you want to say, well, this information was from September, this information was from November, this information was from December. So if you do a define for each of the fields, define file car fix model, because we didn't have a model in CarFix and we did in the others. I'm just saying from CarFix, but then I'm saying the source. The source is coming from CarFix. Define file car, the source is car. Define file car db2, source is car db2, and then I just added that to the print list. So now when I run it, I can see the source of where the data came from. So again, if you have 3 different files that have September, October, November, and September, whatever, the 3 months, then you can go ahead and put the source here if it's important, because you might want to go across source. And if you go across source, then you can see a comparison of the different months easily. And that's interesting that my numbers are cut off. I'll have to fix that. All right, and that's basically more in a nutshell. Yeah, I know. More in a nutshell.
Now,
So any questions?
Yeah, tell me about optimization with more.
Good luck. I don't know. My gut says we're not optimizing because it's 3 separate requests, but you would think that because it acts like a union, it should be able to handle it.
My guess is that if you're in the same database structure, if you're working with all Oracle tables.
Correct. Yeah, on the same connection, just
right,
like all other optimization things.
Right.
But I really don't know. My guess is we're not going to. But nowadays, since we keep making things better, we might be optimizing with the union.
But how is
Since
it?
you're doing
how is
3
it
separate
ordered?
requests, wouldn't it optimize each of the requests separately?
It would, yes, it would. But the question is, will it optimize even more and do a full union with one select statement?
Right. Can this be picked up and turned into a union as opposed to 3 separate requests or 2 separate requests? And that's a good question.
I'll have to find out and get back to you.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Are the byfields respected? Or
Excuse
no
me?
byfield would not be respected at the end? Was everything ordered by the byfields that initially specified?
Yes.
Yes.
So once all the data is gathered into the individual data files that I showed on the slide, then that the combination of those 3 files would then be sorted together. So everything would be sorted in one sort order.
Right.
Good questions. Anything else?
Now, clearly, if you've got 3 different databases, optimization's out of the question for the whole thing. So, I mean, that's actually the beauty of more is it allows you to do a concatenation of data files that you would normally not be able to concatenate. All right. This is where it really came in.
Yeah, so joining is going horizontal, more is adding data.
Right.
So you're going vertical, and then we have match, which will do both.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be next month.
Yeah. Yeah, match and more are similar. Match has a little bit more. Match has a lot more control.
Flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. If there's no more questions.
All right.
Mr. Blood, take it away.
Let me just let's see. Let me take my content, find my content. I think I'm going to want to do 2, but let me start this up. Let me share screen 2. I think I better do this first. Share that. And then from the beginning. There we go. Okay. I want to continue talking about HTML5 and what we can do with the language that sits behind that. Because there's a lot of functionality. It's beautifully hidden. Our front-end tools gather some of it and some of it. But there's a great deal that they don't do. And the only way to get at that is to code it. And that's if you're, we talk about focus as a language, and this is an extension. This is going to be done either in HTML5, JSON, CSS, JavaScript. those are all languages, and a lot of them have to be coded. And if you know how to do that, you can actually pull some more additional functionality out of the product very easily. So I wanted to start talking about that because it's a languagey kind of a thing, and that's what we're into. We talked about graph file last time I talked about it. This is basically the structure of a graph request, and I don't really today I want to really start talking about this area, the set style, where we have the style blocks that allow us to use HTML5. If we want to use the old scripts that we had with the API, we can still use those. Those are still supported in the current product. We want you to get out of those because the HTML5 is a lot more robust, but we will not penalize you for using the old one. We will continue to support it. And we also have web focus style sheet declarations that you can park in here as well. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the functionality that's out there. The functionality is amazingly complex. So let's talk initially. I want to talk about tooltips. Those fun little things that allow you to basically pop up data when you're in a graph, and you hover over the bar or the bubble, and all of a sudden something pops up and you see something. You have a lot of control over that, a lot more control than you probably realize. This is some of the labels that you can actually use in JSON to modify the behavior that you're looking at. These are the defaults showing here, and we'll show some of these. Obviously, if you want a tooltip, the very first thing that has to be enabled has to be set to true. If that's set to false, everything else is irrelevant, and there is no tooltip active. We'll go through. We're going to talk a little bit about style. We'll talk a little about the autos. The auto title font and the auto content font, which give us the ability to basically use a structure within a series, to basically isolate a series and change the behavior of a series within the styling. You can obviously fill with color. You've got the ability to control the border, the color, the width, and the corner radius if you want it. The cascade menu style is really kind of interesting, and we'll take a look at an example of this, because this gives you the ability to build or include either a cascading menu or a submenu within the tooltip, which is a pretty powerful functionality. And we'll take a look at it. Obviously, you've got the ability to control the hover colors. And there's a timeout you can also control. So let's take a look at simple request. Very simple request. I've got only 3 things set in my style. I'm using the bucket syntax basically to target where my fields are going to be going, and that's what I've got. I've got 3 fields, 3 columns. One of them is going into the x-axis, the product category, and the other 2, the revenue US and gross profit, are going into the y-axis. So let's see, if I run this just as is, I'm going to end up with something as beautiful as this. And this is all default. There was nothing in that request about a tooltip, but there is a default behavior for tooltip, which I'm going to get. All right, that's automatic. If I use this I'm going to end up with a default behavior for tooltip. And you can see here that as I position my tooltip over the media player gross profit bar, it's reading out both the product category and the gross profit. Key thing, we will bring out all fields that are available in the tooltips. All right, and if you want to suppress fields, you've got to work to do it. You have to do it by series. So this is one bar. The other bar for the media player is shown right here. Okay, so that you have both of them available to you. Now, that's nice, but we can change that if we want. We obviously can change the color, and in order to change the color, we basically had to define those bars effectively as two different series. And we're going to then operate on them. One is going to be light blue in this case. The other is going to be a light green. And you'll see something there that I've got this HTML tooltip enabled as true. Okay, it's turned on. And I've got something else called snap. Snap is a very interesting little thing because it allows me to position the tooltip display with reference to the element I'm working with, whether it's a bar or a bubble or whatever. It basically will put it at the same point. All right, it has it'll point to it. It's not going to overlay it. It's going to do it a little bit differently. And if we take a look at this, there we go. Here's the basic request. You notice the bars have changed color. No big surprise there. If I go and take a look at my my tooltips, the tooltip for my media player for the light blue bar now has got a slight arrow on it and it's pointing to it, and that's the snap. All right. And same thing happens with the media player with the second bar, the gross profit bar. So you have the ability to actually position this and gain control over it. All right, point to it. So if you've got something that's got a lot of elements in it, and maybe like a scatter plot or something like that, where they're going to be all over the place, using a tooltip with an overlay may not be a really great idea because you're not going to know what it is. The snap in that case is useful because it's going to point to the one that's actually referring to. All right. Auto content, the auto field. You'll notice in here that in the series, it's the same request. And what I'm doing here, I've added a tooltip equals auto to series 0 because I'm going to refer to this. I'm going to use this with a couple of things. Auto content and auto content font is what I'm going to use it with, but there are a couple of other, as I mentioned, there's a couple of other ones. There's another one that's available to you, the auto title font as well. And I'm going to change the font just for that particular series. Previously, I mean, I had the same thing. All of them were exactly the same. The font, the type style were the same for all of the tooltips. And in this case, I have the ability to change that. So if I want to make something a little bit different, I can do that. In other words, I'm going to vary from my default. I'm going to set something and then use it. Right? And that's being done in my tooltip. You'll see again, I've enabled it. I'm working in this case with style. I've got a background is going to be yellow. And I've got this auto content font set to bold 10-point Verdana. So I'm changing the weight, the size, and the font face all in one fell swoop. Right. Let's take a look. And once again, when I run my request, I get exactly what I expect. If I go and take a look at what I just did, this is my auto content. This is the one that I did it to, series 0, the first bar. All right. This is the revenue bar. Now, you notice that everything is bold. I changed the type style. And if I then go take a look at what my gross profit bar looks like, you can see the difference. So you have the ability to actually control this and use it the way you want. Now, let's go a little bit crazier and let's start playing with some cascading menus within the tooltip itself. And you can define this. You can define this actually within the bucket syntax, and you see that I've got it here in column N to the second column. I'm defining a drill menu, and I've got I've got 2 items that I've got 2 potential items that I can hit there. I can either go to Google, and I've got a URL specified for that, or I can go to TIBCO, either one. All right. Now, that is going to set up that drill menu for me. All right. The third column doesn't have anything defined for it. Column 3, which is the second column, doesn't. So we're actually going to define that in the JSON. Now notice that we've been playing here with the JSON final. all right, which basically says override whatever you've designed, whatever you've done, you're going to override this at the server side. All right, and that's where that operates. Now, what we're going to be doing here, and this is for series 1. All right, series 1 is actually the second column, right? It's the second, and the second column is now going to have a group, and it's going to have children. So I'm actually going to define a child that this is going to work with, and it's going to be worked within the series label, which has to do with the name of the group. So and this is associated with the tooltip. Let's go from here, and in the tooltip, here we've got the cascading menu styling we're setting up into the label. You'll notice that we've got the name value here. Basically, we've got a style. We've got a name value, basically, which is showing both font and color. And I've got two name values. I've got a name value, and I've got a hover of yellow. I've got a value for that I'm showing now. I've got both green, and the colors are amazing. Wait and see. All right, this is basically playing a little on the crazy side simply because it's possible. Notice also that I've got the fill here for the tooltip set up as a linear gradient. So I've got some fun. I've played with the colors just to show you what's possible. Now, this is a graph is a little bit different. It's a different graph than we were looking at before, but let's take a look at what the tooltips look like. All right, this is the tooltip on my column 0. This is my drill down. All right, and I've got here, you'll notice the gradient. I've got the gradient set up. I've got the color set up. Notice that if I hit either one of those, I'm going to basically go out. I'm going to be exiting and going someplace else. So I have this ability to be able to build these connections into it so that I can move from here to someplace else. Now, the second column doesn't have that. Remember, we didn't set up that. We set up a group. And the group basically is now showing, and we actually see as you open this up, you'll actually open this up in 2 steps. The group will pop up with stereo systems, which is the data value that's sitting on top, and we'll then be able to take a look at, you'll see the caret there, the greater than caret, that basically indicates that there's something else. And if you click on that, we open up the submenu, which is the series label and the series ID, right? So you have 2 ways to play with this to extend the data, to extend the functionality within the tooltips themselves, right? Now, all right, that's pretty cool. Now, let's talk about something else that's available that isn't normally used. Error bars. Within a graph, I know I have a sense of what is reasonable within my data ranges. And I might want to actually show what I expect to be a normal range or a reasonable range. And I can do that using error bars, all right? Because error bars basically are going to allow me to, within either the y-axis data or the x-axis data, depending on how you're displaying it, to indicate a low value and a high value, all right, for the data that I expect to see, and anything below that, I'm going to mark those within this bar. And I can also, as a third thing, put a marker position in to actually mark a center point if I want. I can use a marker there to set that up. So I can set it up either with a high value and the low value, or with just the I can add a marker position in. The top and the bottom, this hat, okay, I have control over the width of that, and that has to generally do with the size of the bar itself, or the size of the area that whatever I'm working with. The lines have to do with the lines around it. The marker, I can actually indicate the marker that I want to have, and that marker is that little tiny marker position that I want to make to put it in. I can control what it is, all right, I can give it a shape. And once I've got the shape, I can actually color it as well. So let's take a look at, these are the defaults. This is if you do nothing, all right. this is what's going to be delivered to you in the defaults. You'll see that X data and Y data are not defined, which means I'm not going to see any bars at all. If I started to define things, I would see that the hat for the top and the bottom would be 50% of my bar width, or whatever I'm working with. The color is going to be black. It's going to be 1 pixel wide. It's not going to be or 1 pixel, 1 pica wide, and it's going to be in a dash format. Right now, the marker is going to be a diamond if I have it. If the default is gray with a diamond, its size is not defined, so you'd actually have to define that, or we'll pick that up from some other place. All right, those are the defaults for this. Now, everything pretty much has a default when we show it. If you don't use it, obviously you're not going to see it, but if you do use it, okay, this is our standard bar. We're back to this guy again, because we've got bars. We can show things nicely. Now, if we go to add in this, you'll notice again, this operates at the tail end of the processing. All right, this is going to be the last thing that we do. All right, and generally the final, this is a last pass, because we need to have everything else set up before we can actually add the stuff in. In this case, for my Y data, and I've got a group here. Got a group here for each of the series, or each of the groupings that I expect to see. All right, I have 2 series, but I'm going to have multiple bars. And okay, so let's take a look at what ultimately happens. You'll see that the color here, my line is going to be red. It's got a width of 2, and the dash that's set up, because it's going to be using a dash line, is 2 pixels followed by 2 pixels of space followed by 2 pixels. It's a 2. It defines both the size and the space between. All right. The marker is a square in this case, not a diamond. All right, and we've actually given we're playing with linear gradients going between teal and cyan. Okay. The series here has changed. We're changing the color. This is where we're changing the color to light blue and pink. So let's take a look and see what happens when I actually run this. When I run this, I'm going to see bars popping out in this particular area. Now, I only defined 2 of them. If I defined a third one, it would appear in the third case. I didn't define this for the series 1 at all, only for series 0. Right, so that's basically how you can use this. You can use this to indicate where you expect the data to fall. All right, and you do that based upon the data values. Let's back it up. Right in here, in the Y data here, I've got 3 sets of values. The low value, in this particular case, is 5 million. Okay, the positioning of the hat, or the marker, is 20 million. Normally, my high value is 35 million. All right, I can set the, that's basically the way this sets up. Now, once I've got that set up, let's go back. You can see, there's my little box, and I've got my thing set between 15 and in effect 35 million. That's effectively where I'm seeing. Now, that this could be, you can set those values to whatever you want, right? And that's ultimately the critical value, is what do you expect to see? Where do you expect to see it? And that's another way to basically say, okay, what's actually going on here? Is this value way beyond what I expect? Right. No. So, all right, error bars, something to play with. Finally, let's take a look at pictograms. And pictograms are really kind of a lot of fun. Pictograms allow me to use pictures as, in effect, markers within a chart, right? Which is kind of cool. I can basically do 2 things with them. I can, and this has to do, I can work with them, the fill mode. I can either stretch them, take one picture and stretch it, or I can actually have multiple versions of the same pictogram and just build it up to the size that I want. And I've got that option. These are my series that are set up. My pictogram fill mode basically is either going to be stretch, let's see, this stretch, or repeat clip, right? And the repeat clip basically will take a piece of clip art or something small or whatever that you want to give it, and repeat it any number of times to get to the point to the length that needs to be used in order to, in effect, the height for the chart. Now, the backfill is color. We define that's normally going to be undefined. When you see something, normally the crazy thing here about the color, this for the series, and let's go over and take a look at something. The series, within the series, there's within the color, one of the things that's important with this color string. If you just want to see the pictogram, if you don't want to see anything to do with the series bars, you can actually use the property color equals transparent to eliminate, to hide the bar itself. And that way you'll only see the pictogram itself. And then do that. I mean, that's clearly the kind of thing that you want to do if you're going to be stretching something. You don't necessarily want to see a bar behind it or in front of it. So the easy way to do that is the color equals the color colon transparent. Now the actual marker that we're going to be using, which is what it's either going to be what's the repeated clip, or it's going to be the picture that's going to be stretched. It has to be specified in the shape. All right, under marker. I've got a string here, and that has to be it's either a standard marker shape, or it's got to be a URL pointing to an image file. All right. That's actually fairly straightforward. Let's take a look. Let's move on and take a look at something that's actually going on. Here I've got something where I'm going to be using stretch for, again, this is done from on the server out for the display. This is done last. My pictogram properties, I'm going to use the stretch. I'm going to have a single image, and I'm going to stretch it to the size of my bar, because this is a bar again. Notice the color is transparent. I don't want to see the bar. I just want to see the image. And I'm going to be pointing at a shape. All right. And in this particular case, it's a pencil. All right. And I've got a URL, and it has to be set up URL with the open paren and then the URL that you have to access. All right. That's required. Now, if I actually run this, I end up with this, which is actually kind of cool. All right. So you have the ability now to actually also within working with the HTML5 and working with the code that's back here, there's a great deal of variation that you can introduce. Now, there's a wealth of stuff out here, and I've only spent some time today looking at some of it. Later on in the year, or maybe at the beginning of the new year, we'll spend some more time taking a look at some of the other functionalities that are available out here. One of the big areas out here is the introduction of motion and things like defining your own color schemes. And we'll take a look at that the next time that we get together, or the next time I talk about HTML. All right, any questions?
Quiet group today.
Quiet, okay. All right.
Walter, quick question.
Yes, Art.
On that link to a URL,
Right.
does it open a new window so you can close the new window and come back to where you were? Or does it overwrite the current window, meaning if you go out, you have to start all over again?
No, it's effectively not, it's not opening anything there. It's using that as a reference. It's basically securing the GIF or the data, the value, the GIF from that particular point. It's not going to open, it will open it but immediately close it. It's simply using that as the source of the marker.
What about when you had the drill down where you had to go to Google or go to IBI?
Hmm.
Will that open a new window?
You can set it up to absolutely, yes. That when you go to, yes, you have to, and that's also something with drill menu items. Yes, you can.
You can specify the target.
Oh yeah, you specify the target. There is a URL that was in there, and there's a good deal. There's additional functionality that you have to set up to make sure that you can actually go there. All right, but yes, those are designed to actually go someplace. In the case of the marker here, this is just a source for the picture element. Yeah.
My question was related to that go-to, like as Walter said, going to Google or something.
Right.
You can open up another window so that if you close that other window, you're back where you were, you still have your graph, or does it overwrite the current graph so you really can't go back?
I think that's actually going to be controlled by how you set up. There's additional functionality, I believe, in the style sheets to actually indicate what you want to do, whether you want to overwrite the existing window or open another window entirely. Right. That's controllable. Yeah, it's controllable. Yeah, because you're right. If you didn't have that control, you could get totally lost. Right. And in that case, you may only want to go out and get something. But that's something that's yet again more functionality. That's more language that lives underneath the covers. And I want to try to start exposing some of this language because it's very interesting and there's a lot of possibilities here. The more you get into this, the more flexibility you see. There's a lot that you can do. Now, we use a lot of this in the displays that we that we provide for you in the tools. But the capabilities that are out there go way beyond what we offer, way beyond. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to use that if you know where to look and how to explore, then why not? This is all, again, this is not something that's going to be typically accessed from the tool unless you can get to the language side. All right. Now, having said that, there is another, and next month, I guess, I will probably show you the beginning, the Focus Studio, which is it's an HTML front end for the Focus product, which, as you know, has always been a green screen or a terminal-based functionality. So we're introducing a more modern front end there. And it's purely based on the language. So it's kind of like a language tool built in HTML. So we'll take a look at that next month. Any other questions?
All right, we're early this time.
Yeah, how about that?
Fill out
So
your surveys.
Yeah, fill out the surveys, evaluations, let us know how we're doing.
Yep.
And thanks for coming, and see you next month.
See you next month, guys.